Well, that was interesting, but at the end of the day, Isaac Wilson, pretty good. Other parts of Utah, not as much. Still a win? Yeah. So let's talk about it on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen every single day. We are available on all platforms, including YouTube and wherever you may get your podcasts. If this is your first time listening to our show, make sure you like and subscribe. Love interacting with all of you on YouTube and in the YouTube comments, as well as on social media. We can follow our show at Locked On Utes on X. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network. If you're looking for a second listen every single day, you can check out Locked On College Football or Locked On Big 12. Have you covered all the stories you need to know? Or you can check out Locked On Oklahoma State. Learn about Utah's first conference game since the Baylor game was played, but it wasn't a conference game, of course. So this one will be even bigger for Utah if they got coming up. So you can check out Locked On Oklahoma State. Lots of options. But we do appreciate you making Locked On Utes your first listen of the day. And let's talk about Utah's game against Utah State, shall we? So these shows are just kind of going down after the games. We go through what really stood out to me about this game. And yeah, just starting with general thoughts on the game. We're going to start with the offense and we'll get into the defense and we'll talk a little bit about the latest on everything camerizing related. General thoughts, did not like the way Utah started. I did not like Utah's game plan in this one, really on both sides of the ball a lot early, but I thought they made good adjustments throughout. And at the end of the day, they get a win. This is a game where you don't exactly leave feeling fantastic about like, okay, like this team took another step in the right direction. I think there were positives from it, but overall, right, it was in some ways too probably their worst performance of the 3 games so far, and in other ways they got better. So let's dive into all of it. And first, starting off with I just think the biggest positive is the overall game that Isaac Wilson had. Sure, he threw an interception, but first ever true freshman QB to come in for Utah and throw 3 touchdowns in a game. And he really settled in this one and found his groove. Yes, early on, one of the biggest reasons the offense wasn't effective is because of missed throws. But I will say, it's never just Isaac, right? Look at the very first drives of the game. The very first drive in particular, Utah starts that with 2 runs. There are players in the box, but it's not like the box is crazy loaded to start those games. The Utah offensive line is not able to get enough push there. When your starting quarterback is out, the other players have to elevate their play in order to be effective. Yes, maybe the biggest reason that Utah at times was struggling early is because of Isaac's missed throws, but if that's 1A, 1B has to be the missed blocks by the offensive line. It's a group that's still coming together. They're still young. I heard the broadcast crew once again. This is now the second broadcast crew I've heard talk about like the experience of this Utah offensive line. And I'm just not, I just don't buy the experience aspect. For Michael Mulcahy, he's the multi-year starter. Fano's got 1 year and he's at a new position. Kump has been moved all over the offensive line. Tonga has been moved all over the offensive line. And Caleb Lomu just made his third ever start and has in general played in less than, 8 games, I think, in his college career, because I only think he appeared in a couple as his true freshman year. So I just still think this offensive line is coming together, and we witnessed that tonight. This offense as a whole is coming together, right? Because you still see a guy like Dejon Stanley who can make some absolutely electric plays have 2 drops tonight. The first pass was a high throw by Wilson that, number one, I would blame Wilson for that. But I think if you ask Dejon Stanley, he would say, I got to catch and bring that in. And then the second one, which was the easy first down, it should have been, but hits him right in the hands and he drops it. So those are the parts where it's like, okay, this offense is still coming together. The offensive line has moments where it's like, boom, they execute and massive gaping holes. And then they have other times like, oh, you didn't hold that block for very long. And thus we have Micah Bernard and Jalen Glover getting smacked behind the line of scrimmage. So that's why the offense was struggling early. I really thought was just a collection of players not executing and Wilson chief among them. But man, did Wilson start to figure out in the second quarter, and especially his first 2 drives of the second half got me really excited. I've loved watching Wilson grow over the first few games. And maybe you guys won't feel that way, but I feel like he's absolutely getting better. Isaac Wilson, if he had to start next week at Oklahoma State, I don't think it would be very pretty, right? There's a chance that Utah can win, of course, but the truth is Oklahoma State's a really good team and you have to go into their house. That's a game you need Cam Rising for. But Wilson is just continuing to grow and get better. So if there are road games that Utah needs Wilson to come in, I'm not writing Utah off because I continue to see Wilson grow and get better. Think about the first game, how whenever Wilson was pressured, he just kind of take off and try to run. He made several throws in this game when under duress. He also did a really good job to me of scanning the field a few times, going through his progressions. The pass to Brant Keithy to start off the third quarter where he scanned the field. I think Brant was either his third. I think Brant was the third read by the time he got to him, and Brant shook off the tackle and ran for a big game. The patience by Isaac to remain in the pocket. There was another time, it was one of the drives in the first half, I believe it was, where Wilson, there's a blitz that comes up. It's actually pretty well picked up by Utah. Wilson does a good job moving over to his right. He fires a pass to Keithy. It's a little bit behind him, so Utah State DB does a good job knocking it away. But I was like, oh, that's another sign of good growth is the fact that, like, hey, rather than us, oh, the pocket's broken, I got to run around and try to get out of here. He stayed calm and cool in the pocket, moved over, kept his eyes downfield, and delivered a throws a little bit behind. But it's like, okay, once again, step in the right direction. Isaac Wilson from game one, I don't think he throws that. So love seeing Wilson get comfortable. Really like seeing his connection with Dorian Singer. I thought Singer really popped in this game. You can just see what he's just he's a really good all around receiver, right? Can run every route you need. Got a nice catch radius too. So good to see him be active at every field level. Brant Keithy doing the same. Money Parks continuing to pop. Love seeing him find the end zone. And love Wilson giving his guys a chance. How about Caleb Lohner now, his second touchdown as a Utah football player? When you have a guy that big on the field, just throw it up and let him go get it. That's what Wilson did in the first half, and Lohner did exactly that. So once again, really encouraged by the growth of Isaac Wilson. Early on, I'm watching this game and I'm like, man, Utah has a backup quarterback problem. And look, maybe by the time they leave a Big 12 game, if Isaac wasn't to perform well, if he had to go in there, we would feel that way. But I think that Utah learned a lot this game about some things that they need to do better, where they need to continue to grow and improve. And they saw improvement from Wilson throughout the game. Final stats 20 for 33 for Wilson, 239, three touchdowns, and one interception. And that's the interception to me isn't that big of a deal, anyways, too, because it's just like, hey, so many positives overall. One little mistake on the throw. And outside of that, I was like, okay, I'm feeling good about what I saw from Isaac Wilson this game. I feel really good about what I saw from Micah Bernard in this one as well, too. 17 carries, 123 yards, a touchdown. He's explosive. He's tough. And speaking of tough, how about Mike Mitchell? 14 carries for 75 yards. We said Utah would get back into the rushing frame that Kyle Whittingham wanted them to, right in that 220, 230 range. And that's what they were able to do. Even though the offensive line wasn't fantastic and Utah early on in this game had some issues running the ball, they also rattled off some big runs. Micah Bernard had several of them. Mike Mitchell had a couple of them. Bernard had one of 18 yards. Mitchell had one of, or Bernard 64 yards was his long. Mitchell, his long was 18. So love seeing the running backs. We already mentioned the receivers a little bit. How about even the tight ends, right? Like seeing Carson Ryan involved. I love how many tight ends play for Utah. You see Brant Keithy in just this game alone. Utah played Brant Keithy, Dallin Bentley, Carson Ryan, also played Caleb Lohner, Mickey Sugaturaga, as well as Landon King. All of them got in, and all of them should be getting in because they're all legit tight ends who I think at a lot of other programs would be starting because of their abilities both as blockers and their catching savviness. Like that was an impressive catch that Carson Ryan made over the in the end zone. That one-handed snag. We already mentioned Lohner going up. Keithy is such a mismatch at every level of the field. Bentley's a guy who's tough over the middle of the field. Landon King is a mismatch. He nearly brought an incredible pass on his helmet. So many pass catchers for Utah. I didn't like how vanilla the offense was early, especially they started out with two runs. I would have rather them tried to get Isaac an easy completion early in the game, and then they threw a screen pass that ended up getting blown up. So didn't love the offensive start what Utah was trying to do here, but I thought once Utah settled in, once Wilson was able to eventually settle in, tightened up on his accuracy, did a good job scanning the field, so some really good accuracy down the field as well. It wasn't all checkdowns; it was down the field aggressiveness. We saw the best receivers on this Utah roster step up. I even like seeing the screen they got going over to Micah Pittman, where we had I think it was Caldara, could have been Dorian Singer out there as a blocker. Like Pittman's a guy we just figured would be taking a nice role on this team in this offense and make a couple of grabs a game. So good to see him be able to contribute here. Caldara caught one over the middle of the field. Wilson, even on the move, showed some accuracy. So really overall feel encouraged about Wilson. I felt encouraged about the progress this offense made. This would have been a really good game for Cam Rising to get some reps and continue to ramp up for the Oklahoma State game. And that didn't happen. So we can talk about Cam Rising's health at the end of this shortly, but once again, just very pleased by the way this offense kind of grew throughout the game. There are concerns, absolutely. Offensive line still. If Cam got hurt and the game plan isn't crafted around Isaac Wilson, how's he going to fare? Even though I do think he once again continued to grow up in this game, but I really like the two-headed monster that's evolving of Bernard and Mitchell. You can see Keithy Singer, like all the weapons that Utah has. The offensive line's continuing to get better, and Isaac Wilson's continuing to get better. So overall, I think still a lot of positives to take from the offense, even if they're absolutely going to have to get off to a better start if they hope to beat Oklahoma State. So, and speaking of getting off to a better start, the Utah defense is obviously going to have to get off to a better start. But I do think that one's actually going to be even easier, maybe than some of the offensive stuff, because I have legit concerns about the offensive line for Utah. My biggest concern with the Utah defense was the game plan going into this one and why they decided to make a couple of interesting changes. So let's talk about what the Utah defense was trying to do and why I was not a big fan of it, even if they had some nice second half moments in one moment. But first, I want to talk with you all about our friends at 5 Hour Energy. Grab a 5 Hour Energy shot to stay alert to watch all your favorite games, or if you stayed up late to see this big game, whether it's NFL or college football, you can take a 5 Hour Energy shot in the morning so you can start your day off right. I love 5 Hour Energy, right? Zero sugar and a convenient portable size. It's the perfect pick me up for getting stuff done. The 5 Hour Energy website has flavors galore like watermelon, tropical burst, grape, berry, and more. There's a flavor for everyone. You can try them all today. On the site, you even have the option to build your own 12-pack or 24-pack. You choose the flavors and it's delivered right to your door. 5 Hour Energy is the brand that hardworking people like you have trusted for over 20 years to give them that alert, energized feeling they need to get through a hectic day. If you go to 5hourenergy.com, that's the number 5hourenergy.com, and get some 5 Hour Energy products today, you can use my promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order. You cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscriptions orders. You can go to 5hourenergy.com today. All right, keeping the focus on Utah. Talk about this Utah defense, right? First of all, give Bryson Barnes some credit and this Utah State team some credit. Their receivers made plays downfield, right? When you're talking about Tia, Royals, Lane, Hester, I mean, even Bowen with a 31-yard grab. These guys all made plays in one-on-one situations. That Smith Snowden did not have he had an unreal interception, but then there were other moments like the second touchdown Utah State has, it was like his feet were caught in stone and he just got beat off the line and inside on a slant badly. Zemiah Vaughn got beat, but all those guys also made some nice plays. Elijah Davis made some nice plays. We already mentioned the unreal interception Smith Snowden had. And then you get a guy like Zemiah Vaughn, who's a veteran, and he should have had an interception this game. That one early went right through his hands. But give this Utah State team credit. These are really good wide receivers that are Power 5 caliber wide receivers, right? Especially a guy like Royals. So to me, I'm not concerned that like, hey, Utah lost some one-on-ones on the outside. Also, it's college football against good receivers. Like this is going to happen in a game. It's not going to be realistic that Utah is going to hold teams under 13 every week. Yes, I would have liked to see the Utah defense hold Utah State under 13, but when I look back at it and I'm like, you playing a former quarterback who knows you, who knows your tendencies well. You got some wide receivers who made some plays and you're without Cam. Oh, the ball out without Cam Rising obviously doesn't affect the defense as much, but just some. I'll say the game plan not going in their favor. I understand why Utah Utah State ended up with 21 points. And what I mean by the game plan not going their way, isn't that on Utah? It absolutely is. But this is the kind of mistake that I feel like Utah made and they won't make again. Kyle Whittingham said in this post game thing, right, that they tried a game plan like they played with USC in 2022, just something different that Bryson Barnes hadn't seen. And they realized not long after, like, oh, this isn't really working. So let's scrap this and do something else. And so, what exactly was Utah doing? Well, a lot of time they would walk Lander Barton down onto the line of scrimmage. So, like, only Sione Fotu, Trey Reynolds, or whoever else, would there be like one linebacker in the middle of the field? So, if they're able to get push up front, which Utah State was able to a couple of times, there's not a linebacker there to make playoff frequently, or guys like Sione Fotu and Reynolds would miss a tackle. Fotu a couple times for sure. Utah did miss Corene Reed in this game. I think Sione Fotu is going to be a good player. He's simply not one of the best linebackers in college football, and I truly believe Corene Reed is one of the 20 best linebackers in college football. So you feel the drop off when he's not in there. So there was missed tackles. There was also some missed assignments too. And one thing that really hurt Utah's rush defense early on in this game is because they were trying to do what they did against USC a few years ago. There were several plays they only had one defensive tackle on the field. So one of the things that makes Utah so elite, right, is Junior Tafuna, Keanu Tanuvasa, and Samote Pepper. Like one of those three guys, or two of those three guys being on the field at all times. And there were plays where Utah opted for. There was one time it was Connor O'Toole, Van Fillinger, and well, Van Fillinger was just the other D tackle a few times. Like they would line him up inside, like over the guard. And that did not go well for Utah. The Utah State guards were able to get good movement up front because as good as Van is, he's good at setting the edge. He's not built to take on a double team. That's what Junior, Keanu, all those guys were able to do. So Utah went away from that and started to just play their, normal 4-2, get their linebackers in the middle of the field, get two big defensive tackles on the field, and that helped shore up their run defense too. Utah was also just stronger tackling on the edge as this one wore on to. Just some uncharacteristic mistakes, like we mentioned for Utah. Some things will show up again. There will be. I do think Utah's run defense will be improved, right? Like Utah State, Facian ended up with 115 yards. Like I don't expect that. I think there's a really good chance that Utah holds Ollie Gordon under 115 yards. Some of you may think, wow, that's crazy. But I think we all know the difference between how Utah is going to game plan for Ollie Gordon compared to Utah State. So I expect the Utah defensive line to bounce back. I do think the secondary, this is going to be a thing with them. They're going to get beat. There's going to be one-on-one opportunities throughout the game. You can see Utah has good defensive backs. So the windows are tight, but the windows exist. So that's going to continue to be a thing, I feel like, on the season where, hey, pass rush isn't going to get home every time, even though I do think Utah has a pretty dang good pass rush. And that's where you're going to see those other teams' receivers pop up, and they're going to make a big plays in the passing game. So that'll be something to watch for. But overall, the defense obviously played much better in the second half. They gave up a touchdown in each quarter, but only 7 points in the second half. There was some missed tackles in the run game and just some things Utah's got to clean up. But I also do think this was one of the situations where, hey, it is a little bit of a rivalry. These Utah State players, like, yes, Oklahoma State's obviously going to play incredibly hard next week, but Utah State, because so many of these guys probably a lot of them are in state, right? They grew up wanting to go to Utah, and Utah didn't make that offer. They were always, especially, and guys like Bryson Barnes even, right, went to Utah, but felt a little bit like, hey, I wasn't handed the backup job last year, which is something he kind of talked about and that he was frustrated by. Utah was never going to be able to play quite as hard as Utah State in this one, even though Utah obviously still played incredibly hard. There's just different motivating factors and levels. And in some ways, Utah was obviously slow to wake up, as we mentioned, with some of those missed assignments and the big drives the Aggies were able to go on. But at the end, Utah got a lot of it corrected in the second half. I still feel good about this defense. And yes, I know that USC had more success shutting them down, but I'll say, I mean, look, USC is really good. USC very well might be better than Utah. They're ranked higher than them currently. And this USC team, because of how good their defense is a lot different than the Caleb Williams ones that Utah played, right? So give Utah State credit for a really good game plan. Bryson Barnes made plays with his arm and legs, also turned it over. How about Cameron Calhoun's interception? That was great to see. Absolutely love seeing him get after it out there. And I want to break, and then Smith Snowden, of course, had the other incredible end zone interception. So love seeing both those guys make some plays. Overall, still feel really good about this Utah defense in full. You're going to give up points in college football. Wish it wasn't 21. Think there was definitely some things in this game where it was a disappointing performance out of the Utah defense, but overall, I do think that will be fine. I think Morgan Galley tried something, didn't really work. They made adjustments, and they were a lot better in the second half because of it too. Also, just you continue to see how like guys like Keanu Tanuvasa, what a game record he just continues to be. He only ended with 3 tackles, 1 sack, but he was everywhere. He caused pressure. He created chaos. He's just so explosive on the interior that I think he's a guy who has a chance to really wreck Oklahoma State's game plan coming up this Saturday too. So many key players on this Utah defense, so many guys that I think are going to factor into what should be a awesome Big 12 showdown next week. So things to clean up for the Utah defense as well as the Utah offense, but still overall left encouraged. And I'm curious what you guys think in the comments. I left this game more so feeling like, okay, good teams have these games where they play down to the level of their competition. Look across college football. Kansas State was awesome this weekend. They beat the snot out of Arizona. Look at last week what happened against Tulane, right? So I do think there are good teams that just have these games. And I like the corrections that Utah made. The fact that this game didn't end up being very close, I thought was very encouraging. Yes, I would have liked to see Utah finish a couple of their drives. They had to settle for field goals a few times in this one, but they were also without their starting quarterback. So no Cam Rising in. You still score 38 points, which is right around what I projected them to, I think, end up getting. Like that. That's still good. Yes, wish the defense held them to 14 instead of 21. And even there were some other things, right, where Utah State maybe could have even had more. But at the end of the day, 38 to 21, it's still pretty good, still pretty dominant. Utah win. Things to clean up on, things to improve, potentially some things that I am concerned about. I don't know if they'll get turned around in the week. Offensive line and cornerback room being the two biggest ones, but excited to see what this team can do as they get ready for that first Big 12 showdown officially of the season. And of course, we want to have Cam Rising back. Kyle Whittingham mentioned about something about Cam Rising in his post game. So we are going to talk about that in one moment. But first, want to talk with you all about our great friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, right now we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out of market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. You can just visit fanduel.com and download America's #1 sports book today. How do you think Utah is going to fare against Oklahoma State, right? Those lines will be coming out soon. How do you think for NFL action? I mean, there's so many fun games we got going on this weekend. We got Falcons Eagles on Monday Night Football. So whatever way you're leaning in, if that includes MLB too, we got the playoffs right around the corner. Make sure you guys head over to FanDuel Sportsbook today. Visit fanduel.com to look at and download all of the odds and lines. FanDuel.com. Download America's #1 sportsbook today. Brief little technical hiccup there, but thankfully, just like Utah, we were able to get that all figured out. So to wrap up the show really quick, just wanted to talk about the latest reports of Kyle Whittingham talking about Cam Rising. We did get the reports that said, hey, they're hoping to have him back by next week. We'd heard from Porter Larson earlier in the week on this show. Had this been a big game, Cam would have played. The fact that Cam dressed, the fact that Cam was warming up and everything leads me to believe if this was a big game, we would have seen him go. So I am feeling overall optimistic about where this team's at. I do not feel like this was last year's situation where Cam really wasn't healthy and they just kind of let us along for a while. This feels different, not just because of the reports that are coming out, but because we've seen Cam out there. We see him warming up. We see him look pretty good. I feel like he's going to play at Oklahoma State next week. And that's good because this offense is better when Cam Rising's out there. His ability. There was a play, we didn't talk about this as Wilson. There was a play in the first half. It was a 4th down. Isaac should have tried to throw to Dorian Singer. That's the exact type of play Cam runs. He knows to run right there. And Isaac, still learning and growing, decided to try to make a play downfield. That's what Cam will provide when he's back. And he just knows how the playbook's more opened up. Also, really quick, speaking of the playbook, I did love the shovel pass to Brant Keith. I thought it was a nice little wrinkle. Would love to see Utah do more of that. They even got creative. They put Brant Keith in it as a Wildcat. I thought that was a lot of fun too. So some fun wrinkles from Andy Ludwig throughout this game, even if I thought he started out a little too vanilla. But Cam should be back. We'll be talking about that more on this week's episodes of Locked On Utes. But Utah is obviously better with Cam at the helm. You could see the missed plays and the missed throws. And there's just a boost when Cam is out there. It's so different when it's 3rd and long and Cam Rising's in there versus a true freshman's in there, even when you're like, hey, we got some other playmakers on the outside. Cam has been there and done that back-to-back Pac-12 champion, of course, in 21 and 22. And now, as we gear up for conference play, this is his opportunity to really make a name for himself in the Big 12. I can't wait to see what this Utah team is going to do with the opportunity they have coming up. I do expect Cam to play this coming week. I think Utah is going to be good to have him back. They were able to rest him against Utah State. They got in. They won the game. Utah, unless I'm missing everyone off the top of my head, did make it through the game healthy. That was a big thing. I know a lot of you were talking about in the comments last week is worried about this team making it through healthy. Thankfully, they got out of it healthy. So gearing up now for a big time showdown in Stillwater. It's going to be a lot of fun, and we'll have a lot of coverage for it this week on Locked On Utes. Tons of local guests coming on. Also, a really fun crossover with Cody Stovall of Locked On Oklahoma State. We were even jawed back and forth a little bit on in the DMs with each other earlier today, fired up about getting to talk. So it's going to be a really fun week of Locked On Utes. Can't wait for you guys. Appreciate all of you for continuing to support and watch this show. What do you think of the game? Let me know in the comments below. What questions do you have about this team moving forward? Look forward to hearing all of those responses. I can't wait to cover this team as they get up for their first official game in the Big 12. Utah got in and out of the Utah State game. No, it wasn't perfect, but at the end of the day, they get a strong win in terms of winning by double digits, and they get out of it healthy. So that's going to do it for today's Locked On Utes. We'll be back tomorrow, breaking the game down and looking ahead to everything that is to come from the Oklahoma State game. We look forward to seeing you then.